Yo, what's up? We out here, another doctorate vlog reflection. This is year 3, and this is point number 4 from yesterday, day 2. And this point right here, it's interesting because I've heard a lot of things kind of hinting at this from years ago, but I never would have bundled it up this way. And I guess that's why it's the doctorate program. We're getting better experience, and maybe through all the education, I've actually leveled up in my ability to understand things and now apply the things that I heard from years ago. But anyways, this was the statement that was made. You can be in good and regular standing with the church without being in good and regular standing with God. Now, one of the reasons that statement is so poignant and powerful is because the conversation stems from what a church will find is acceptable versus what God may find is acceptable. And it also ends up lowering the standard because you're looking to what a church is saying is acceptable rather than what God says is acceptable. Now, it is a hard topic to discuss because being a member of a church, and many Christians are members of churches, each church that we identify with, whatever it might be, or even if you wanted to say religion as a more general term, there are standards, there are rules, there are expectations that are a part of different religions, different circles of spirituality, different churches that you may be involved in, right? But the thing is, how does that reflect on God and what he's looking for in acceptance? And what is that doing in terms of the culture? How's that impacting the culture that actually happens in the church? For example, the thing that brought this statement up in class was a discussion on openness and honesty within the church and how it's very difficult for people to trust others in church because everyone's supposed to be perfect. Everyone's supposed to be at that certain standard to maintain good and regular standing for church. But the professor made a great observation, and he said, well, what does that mean? Does it mean that it's somebody who hasn't sinned or someone who's confessed everything and they're good to go? No. More often than not, what good and regular standing means is somebody whose sins haven't been made public yet. So you can have somebody who's dealing with gambling or adultery or robbery or whatever it might be. They could be hiding all kinds of things, anything it could be. The point is that as long as it stays undercover, you can still be in good and regular standing with your church or with your religion. But God doesn't have that same bar of acceptance. And I'm not saying that he's just going to outwardly reject you because of these things. He's forgiving, he loves us, and he's willing to accept us no matter what, which is also a hard concept for many of us. But the reality is we have to be aware of that and say, okay, just because I'm in good and regular standing with church may not necessarily mean I'm also in good and regular standing with God. We have to be open and honest with ourselves. Now, I think one of the other reasons this is very important is because imagine the kind of culture we can create in our spiritual circles, in churches, within religion, when people can be open and honest and accountable for the things that they are doing or that they have done, and maybe at a baseline, just the way that they feel. How might your church experience change if you felt like you could be honest with the church members that you might see once or twice a week? How might it feel for you to have someone open up to you about something that they've been struggling with or dealing with, and and they know that it's going to be a great response and you're going to be there for them because that's what the space is for? We often talk about the church is not a country club for the righteous, but it's supposed to be a hospital for the sinners. But good and regular standing in a hospital would mean that you don't have any sickness, that you're completely healthy. So good and regular standing lends itself to that imagery of a country club for the righteous. Whereas being honest with it and saying, hey, we're all sinners. The only perfect person to ever exist is Jesus. So if you go to church and because you're not hearing anything, you think people are perfect, don't be fooled. Everybody's got something in the closet. All right. But it's like, imagine how it would change if we embrace it as a hospital for sinners and walked into that space with that mentality. How might the interactions between people become more genuine and real? And how much more support might you feel that you're getting for the struggles and the things that you're dealing with? Now it's not taboo anymore. Now you can be open without judgment, because why should any of us judge when we're all sinners, right? So it's a game changer. But this idea of good and regular standing, it was a very humorous conversation, but it made me think about these other aspects of it. And I'll finish up with this point. This will be like the second major point of this video. And this is kind of based on the statement that I had read in a book long ago. It was a mission book. I don't remember exactly which one, and it may have even been for the doctoral program. But it said something to the effect of the church tends to make God's mission the church's mission. So now when I'm doing something in accordance with the mission, it isn't I'm embarking on God's mission, I'm embarking on the church's mission. If that's the perspective, who gets the credit? Who's the driver of the mission? Am I going to the church as my reference point, or am I going to God as my reference point? And again, the reason this is so important to understand is because you have people who, in their misunderstanding of the mission of God and where the primacy should lie, if it's in the church or if it's in God, they'll put their trust in the church, which is a collective of humans, as opposed to God, right? And they'll give everything that they have for the sake of the church, which is not the same thing as giving everything for the sake of God. It's different. It's a subtle difference. But this idea of being in good and regular standing with the church and good and regular standing with God, giving your all to the church, giving your all to God, these are two different things. And we can't get it twisted. So something to be aware of. Let me know what you think about that down below and how you resonate with that. What are some questions that pop into your mind when you hear this distinction being made? How does that impact you personally? What are the kinds of things you'd like to see in a church in terms of openness? Are you okay with it being more closed off and everyone being the picture of perfection while you feel like you're struggling on the inside with your own issues and problems? Let me know. But yeah, like, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned, because there are several more great points and things to talk about. This is just scratching the surface, but I'll see you in the next one. All right, peace.